We're going to read a passage from the Bible, from Luke chapter 15. And this was actually the first passage when we arrived 4 years ago. This was the passage that I read and that I preached on, and it felt like it was appropriate that we look at this again. So this is from Luke chapter 15. And beginning at verse 11. Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the elder son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The elder brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded to him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" Today I want to talk for a few minutes about coming home. 4 years ago, Tara and I left our home in the UK and we came to Rio de Janeiro. And now we are about to return to the UK, but if we're honest, it doesn't feel like we're going home, because this has become our home. You have become our home. And everyone should have a home. I mean, everyone should have a physical home, and it's one of the great tragedies and injustices in the world that not everyone has a physical home. But everyone also needs a social home or an emotional home, a place where people feel safe, where people feel like they belong. But even greater and deeper and more significant than that social home is what you might call a spiritual home, a place where you are totally safe, totally loved, and where you perfectly belong forever. And in the Bible, God is very often described as a dwelling place, as a home. In the New Testament, Jesus says, live in me, make your home in me. St. Augustine, one of the great theologians in history, said this prayer to God. He said, Lord, you made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until we find rest in you. In other words, home is not found in a location, but in a person. And yet we can very often feel like we're not quite at home. We can feel restless. When I was growing up, there was a superb TV series called Quantum Leap. And this was a very big series. It was in a golden era of TV, of like the A-Team, Knight Rider, and there was Quantum Leap, which was in the 1980s and early 1990s. And each episode of Quantum Leap started with these words. It was incredible. Theorizing that one could time travel within his own lifetime, Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. He woke to find himself trapped in the past, facing mirror images that were not his own, and driven by an unknown force to change history for the better. His only guide on this journey is Al, an observer from his own time, who appears in the form of a hologram that only Sam can see and hear. Can you tell how good it was? And so Dr. Beckett finds himself leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping that each time his next leap will be the leap home. And actually, I wonder whether it speaks of something of the tendency in modern life, that we can find ourselves leaping from thing to thing, leaping maybe from job to job, or relationship to relationship, or from screen to screen, hoping each time that the next leap will be the leap home. And yet we can find that that sense of home isn't quite there. And this story that Jesus tells is about two sons who really need to come home. And they need to come home in different ways. For the younger son, he is geographically distant from his father. And for the older son, he is geographically present, but he is emotionally distant from his father. For the younger son, it was dramatic and it was very obvious, him leaving home. For the older son, it was subtle and it was hidden. And for the younger son, it was because of his pursuit of pleasure. For the older son, it was his work. But for both of them, they need to come home. And this is a story about a God who welcomes his children home. And actually, the Christian life is always about coming home. It's a constant journey of returning to a Father who loves us. How do we do this? Well, the first thing is to come to our senses. It says here that the younger son, when he came to his senses, he realized that what had promised to be freedom was actually just another form of slavery. It says that he was working with pigs. As a good Jewish boy, he would have, pigs were considered to be unclean animals. And he never would have been able to think that he would ever go anywhere near pigs. But he finds himself working with these pigs. And when you find yourself doing the things that you promised yourself you would never do, then it's time to come home. It says that this younger son longed to fill himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, when he must have known they wouldn't satisfy that hunger. And when you find yourself looking for things to try to fill yourself with things that deep down you know are not going to satisfy you, then it's time to come home. The older son, too, desperately needs to come home. And there are the signs there for him as well. He's become bitter, he's become resentful, and he's become cynical. He says, his father comes to him and he says, look. He doesn't even call him father. And when God has become for you a distant figure who has wronged you, instead of a devoted father who loves you, then it's time to come home. He won't even recognize that his brother is his brother. He says, this son of yours. And actually, he's believing the worst about him. He says, this son of yours who squandered his wealth on prostitutes. It doesn't actually say that that's what the younger son had done. But when you find yourself believing the worst about people instead of the best, and when you find your thoughts exaggerating the faults of others, then it's time to come home. This older son, he says, I've been slaving away for you. But he's not a slave. He's a son. And I suppose when your life feels like it's about slaving away instead of being a son or a daughter of God, when life has become about duties rather than delight, then it's time to come home. And so each of these sons desperately needs to come home. I mean, this older son, he refused to enter the party. There's a party being thrown and he won't join in because he's more concerned about the waste. He's more concerned that it's unfair. In the early years of having children, we have 4 children. And in the years where they were very young, Tara and I used to quite often go back to see my parents. And I was conscious going to see my parents, we would just bring so much chaos. And there was mess, and there were tantrums, and there was vomit, and all these toys being thrown everywhere. And it was even worse when we took our children. And yet our parents never focused on the mess and disruption. But for this older son, that's what he's done. And he feels it's unfair. This son has inherited the half of the estate, but he's worried about the fattened calf being lost. And when you find yourself focused on what you lack rather than what you've been given, then it's time to come home. And so these 2 boys need desperately to come home. And we come home when we come to our senses, when we see the signs, and then when we remember our father. This younger son, it says that he said, how many of my father's servants? He remembers his father who let him go in the first place. I mean, at that time, the younger son saying, please can I have half my inheritance? The normal response would be to be refused and to be beaten. But the father lets him go. He gives him his freedom. And the Father God always lets us go. He lets us wander off. But then he waits for his son. And he never stops waiting for him. I read about a woman who lives in Swansea in Wales. And the neighbors noticed that for 35 years, at nighttime, there was a light always on in the attic. And they discovered that it was because her son had left home 35 years before. And he had a room in the attic. And so she always keeps a light on in the attic as a sign that her son is always welcome home. I mean, these 2 boys have hurt their father. Both of them hurt their father in so many ways. For the younger son to say, please, can I have half my estate, is saying, I wish you were dead so I could have my inheritance. It was the most painful and humiliating thing a son could do to his father. And the older son is being so disrespectful. He doesn't call him father. He refuses to enter the party that his father is throwing. He too is really hurting and humiliating his father. And yet the father still goes to them, still loves them, never gives up on them, never stops loving them. We can break God's heart, but we can never destroy his love. And so we remember the Father. And then as we begin to come home, we experience all the joys and blessings of what it means to come home. I mean, look at what happens. It says that the father sees him when he's a long way off. I mean, this boy must have changed so much over this time. And yet the father still sees him. He recognizes him. And God is a father who sees us and knows us perfectly. It says he runs to him. The son doesn't have to go all the distance. the father runs to him. It's the father who covers the great distance. And then it says that the father says, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. This son who would have been so ashamed, and what he was wearing would have been the marks of his shame. And the father covers him with a robe. It's a sign that it's not that the past hasn't happened. It's that that's no longer going to be what identifies him. It's no longer going to be how people are going to see him. It's going to cover his shame. He says, give him sandals to wear. The servants would have been barefoot, but the sons and daughters wore sandals. And so what he's saying is, you're a son. You're part of the family. And then it says he gives him a ring. I mean, what was it that Beyonce said about rings? Actually, I'll tell you what she said. I had to look it up. Back in 2008, she said, because if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Don't be mad once you see that he wants it, because if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. And then it goes on, whoa, oh, 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 whoa, oh, 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 oh. Now, if I'm honest, I don't understand completely what she's saying, but she seems to be making a link between having a ring and being loved. And I've had the privilege of doing many weddings in my time, and it's an amazing moment because you're right there with the couple in the best possible position. And there's a moment where you pray over the rings, and you pray, may this ring be a symbol of unending love and faithfulness. And the father gives this ring to his son, a sign of unending love and faithfulness. Whether you're single or whether you're married, whether you're divorced or whether you're widowed, everyone gets to wear a ring when they come back to the Father. We all have that symbol of unending love and faithfulness. And then the Father throws a party. He celebrates. But look at what he does also for his older son. He also goes out to him. He talks with him. He gives him space. Just in the quiet, he works with him. I've often wondered whether the younger son was an extrovert and the older son was an introvert. And because there are extrovert ways of getting lost, which is through activities and through people, and it's all very loud and obvious. And there are introverted ways of getting lost, which is more internal and hidden. But notice the way the Father knows how to love each of his sons. For his extroverted son, he knows he needs to be welcomed with a party and celebration and its noise and its people and it's very public. But for his son to be brought home, he needs space, he needs quiet, he needs a long conversation. But it's what each of his sons needs. And so the Father welcomes us home. And he will welcome each of us home. And it only takes the smallest step. And this younger son, actually, it's not that he's particularly worked it all out. I don't know whether he's completely sorry for everything. He's worked out what he should say, and he's hoping he'll come back. But he just takes this small step, and then the Father does all the rest. And for the older son as well, he's taking a small step. He's telling his father how he feels, which is a really important step. And then the Father does the rest. And sometimes returning to the God who loves you doesn't take huge steps, huge leaps. Sometimes it's the smallest thing, the beginnings of a prayer, a journey back to church, a conversation with a friend. And God the Father does the rest. There's this phrase that is repeated twice in this story, which is, this son of mine was dead and is alive again. As something has come back alive in this boy who's come home to his father. I remember reading of a boy who says that when he was 7 years old, he went to hug his father. And his father stepped back and said, "Now you're 7 years old, we don't hug anymore, we just shake hands." And he said, this boy said that something died in him that day. But here in this story, we get the opposite. This son comes back to his father and he goes for the handshake. And instead, his father wraps him in his arms and kisses him and hugs him, and something comes alive in him. And all of this is possible because of what Jesus has done for us. Jesus experienced the opposite of home. Jesus went to the cross. He was rejected. He was hated. He was taken outside the city gates. He was humiliated and he was shamed. But he did that for each one of us so that we, each of us, can know what it's like to come home. A few years ago in England, there was a 15-year-old girl called Megan Stammers who went missing with her teacher. She ran away from England with her teacher and they went to France. And it was in the news and people were looking for her. And her parents did a press conference. And in front of the TV cameras, her mother said this: "I want to give a message to my daughter. Sweetheart, I don't care what you've done or why. I just want you to come home." And this is what God says to each one of us today. I don't care what you've done or why. I just want you to come home. Should we pray?